Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, a show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Iñaki and I'm the co-founder of AppLover, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. Hey Iñaki, thanks for accepting our invite. It's great to see you again, man.
Thank you, Jan. It's always good talking to you.
I wanted to ask you a very simple question. I know your story is quite inspiring. Could you share some insights on your background, being
Sure.
an athlete before and then ending up in business? How did it
Yes,
happen?
yes. I mean, it's interesting as you said because it was by mistake how I started in business and how I started in sport. So my dad, he was an entrepreneur and he started from scratch a dairy business in Mexico. And he invited me, little by little, playing to work and then working to play. So when I was I was working with him, weekends and so on, since I have memories of, but I really started taking responsibilities around 12 years old, and people reporting to me and doing like more serious stuff, and it just built from there. And I was always parallelly to working with him and developing and growing his business, because it was like a 3 or 4 man show, and we got like further down the line to plus 400 people and several million euros in revenue. But when it was really small, it was that, like, helping him, and I was immersed in that world of like commerce and sales and marketing and customer service and client facing in traditional businesses, in traditional channels in Mexico. What we have is like flea markets, like B2B, very, very big clients. So that's how I grew in business. There was a point when I was close to my 20s, early 20s, where like the company was huge. I was supposed to become the next CEO of the family business.
A
There was
succession.
some, yeah, like the succession, and it's long tradition in my family in the dairy industry. I would be fourth, fifth generation, not in the same branch, but let's say the recipe of the family always around, farming, dairy business, and so on. But there were some family situations. My parents got divorced. I was in the middle of them, and I said, like, my run away from the situation and chasing my really big dream was like, guys, I've been always with this in my head of becoming a professional athlete. And I mean, to be honest with you, I was active all my life, but when I was back then working with my dad early in my teenage times, I was a bit chubby, right? I did some boxing and I was racing cars, and I also liked a lot shooting firearms, a sport. So I was always active and doing stuff. I played high alive, which is a Spanish sport, a Basque sport, but never so serious. And I decided to join triathlon, like out of the blue. I did
Why, why triathlon? Why this particular discipline?
um, it's hard to tell, but I was actually having a postgraduate study in family business, and I'm the guy which now my mentor in how to set family businesses, corporate governance and all the structure, the transition. I was doing these postgraduate studies, and in one of his classes, he presented this idea of what was an Ironman, and he shows this video of the Hoyt team, which was very inspiring, which is the dad carrying his ill son, Rick Hoyt, and Dick Hoyt. And I was like, wow, this guy is like carrying another human being in the Ironman distance. It looks so amazing and so impossible at the same time. Back then, I didn't know how to swim, and I'm talking like my early 20s. So I said, this is kind of cool. It seems kind of impossible. Maybe if I devote a big period of time in my life, I could do it. And I kind of run away of this situation of family business and just find my way later in life. So I had that, like, I would say 10-year chunk of being an entrepreneur together with my dad and starting other businesses on my end. And then another 10 years building from scratch, being a triathlete, as you mentioned, Ultraman, which is basically a double Ironman.
Oh,
But I
why
did.
ultra? Why out of, triathlon is hard enough, and why ultra?
It's kind of opportunistic. I think it just seemed interesting to me. Hard, kind of impossible, to swim. The distances seem absurd, like 10 kilometers swim, 420 kilometers in the bike, and a double marathon. It was like, this is just fucking stupid. So I was like, okay, maybe I will die in the attempt, but if someone else has done it, I want to go over that path. And I think it's like in business. It's like if I ask you why you end up doing app lover, probably you have some crazy, random, opportunistic, like you were not like, oh, I want to like develop when you were 10 years old, this full stack development agency, right? It's like it just happens. And you either
That's true.
go for it or you don't go for it. So that's a bit on how I ended up on these like 10-year cycles of like really young entrepreneur, much toward family businesses, and I did some businesses in that time. Then I jumped into the, I would call it elite sport, and becoming an expert in the discipline, up to become a world champion when I almost retired in 2016. And then coming back to business because I mean, to be honest, what I like, as you can see in sport and business, is the people and the challenge for the right reasons. It doesn't matter if it's sport, doesn't matter if it's business.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about this as well. But as I understand, so family business, then sport, but then you ended up in tech. So how did that happen?
Well, that's even more random. I mean, how I ended up in Poland is because I married Kasia. There is no other reason. It's not the weather, it's not the food. So I mean, I appreciate the weather to some extent. Like right now, I'm in Mexico City visiting family because I haven't been here since COVID. But to be honest, I feel that Poland, and specifically Katowice, is my home, and I really like Poland, and I don't see myself moving away. So that's how I ended up in Poland. And as you know, and as many people don't know, because many people in North America and Latin America and many other parts of the world, they are not aware that Poland, it's a hub tech. It's a hub of technology, and it's a hub of technology that it's really capable in terms of competitiveness, not only because of the high level of education of people, but the circumstances, the geopolitical circumstances where Poland is today is absolutely fantastic. So again, it's just opportunistic. I just ended up in this country that I now call home, and I feel like my own. And because I was there, I saw that opportunity, and I slowly navigated towards people like you, like Piotr in Blogger, and like many other Polish founders and very, very smart people that has that engineering and also that management capacity of building something amazing from technology.
So you're active advisor and investor, and maybe you can talk about some projects that you are currently involved in.
Sure. I mean, one of the earliest projects I got involved into technology was, and all of them were almost in parallel, but I will start with OQB and Trisoft, or Chisoft, as you will say in Polish. And it was again like totally random. Like I met Kamil, which is the current CEO, and by the way, one of my very good friends. And I met Kamil Folkert in the pool in Tehe once I was swimming there, and we started chatting about, like, hey, you swim good, and okay, and your feet, and blah blah blah. And years after that, it's like, oh, and we started knowing each other better and going for bike rides. And I didn't know what this guy was doing. Obviously, he knew I was in the past a former elite triathlete. And one day he was like talking about his ideas on the business, on technology, on artificial intelligence, demand and replenishment forecasting using machine learning, and all these. Like for me, it was like, wow, this is amazing. But then he started to approach the marketing and sales side from the engineering perspective, and I'm like, whoa, this guy is like a chicken without head. I need to help him. So all the story started like this, and from few hours, a month of like supporting Camille's business and Chisoft and OQB turned out like fractional leadership, and I ended up involved in a very extensive way with them up until today. We got venture capital founded by Beck, by Warszawa Equity Group, and it's going really, really well, the company, and that's one of them. Other one, which is also kind of random story, not so much into technology, but more into climate and sustainability. It's with Jurek, someone you know, Jan, and it's also a very good friend of mine. And we are partners in his business in JWA. And basically what we do there is sustainable buildings and ESG strategies for different businesses, specifically real estate, but we support other businesses, energy efficiency, and all the sustainable part, which is kind of engineering technology if you see it from the energy modeling perspective. And how I met Jurek, totally random, again through sport, triathlon. I ended up advising, doing fractional leadership, and investing in his business, and now we are partners and expanding around the world. So those are two examples, a little bit on two different areas. Then I met app lovers, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But JWA is concerns upon sustainability, green buildings, etc., etc. But as an advisor, what the advantages you see to implement this green IT strategy and this, let's say, green strategy in general?
Well, I think with sustainability, if we see it from the very, very high end, there are three key components. One, of course, is the risk management component that we need all to assess. And it's important in any business, and it's real. So risk management is one. Second one is compliance. ESG, as we move further down the line in the timeline of business and financing and the world of money and doing business, it's gonna become more and more relevant. So all of us in business that are not taking seriously, even for the right reasons, sustainability will face the wall when it comes to financing and being compliant with the law. So either if you do it in an authentic manner for the right reasons, or you do it for compliance, most, if not all, companies should be thinking about this. And those are two. So risk management, compliance, and of course, there is the third one, which I don't feel super happy about it, but it's real, which is the marketing component, right? So companies and customers really liking that you are like sustainable and you're taking care of the environment. But those three are real, are happening, and are happening not only in real estate where we mostly focus, but in all areas. You mentioned IT. IT is very broad. It goes from hardware to software, and it has a lot of energy consumption in between and a lot of waste going into the environment. So I believe CIOs and CTOs who are already thinking about this as part of their development strategy when they're building a software, when they're building a hardware, when they're thinking about scaling their business or their infrastructure, is really, really important to include in the process companies like us, like Jotwa, or people capable on supporting the ESG strategies for those three components that I just mentioned.
Okay, and with OQB, what's your current role there?
Well, with OQB, I'm playing VP of Marketing and Sales, and I have an active role between the operations and the management. It's been very interesting, OQB, because as you know, many of the Polish founders, when they develop technology, they are really focused into the product, and they build the product out of their head and their passion and their engineering capacity, and it's fantastic. But then you face the real wall, which is what's actually the market or the customers needing. So all this product market fit, go to market model is where I've been involved more in the last, I would say, 2 years. And right now we're really like moving through specifically in the product market fit. And as you know, for doing a proper product market fit, you need the founders, actually the Polish founders with the engineering capacity, because all the roadmap is in their heads. And if you are in the commercial area and you're trying to do the product market fit by your own, you are missing the like all the features, the roadmap. So you will always need in this case, the founders that has this engineering capacity, and you need to sell them the idea of, or show them the idea of what's happening really on the market, what's really accepted by the customers, and that's the real product market fit. And maybe you reshape a little bit the go-to-market model, but in general terms, go-to-market model is something I can do in service companies, in product companies, because it's very market, client, finance oriented. And of course, the product is kind of a black box. But as soon as you move into the product market fit, product is not a black box anymore. It's like it's
Yeah.
the thing to be fitted. So that's where a commercial team will start struggling in the product market fit. And that's where we really need to blend engineering, normally the founders, together with the commercial team to really make it happen and do something amazing.
Okay. So your sweet spot obviously is sales and marketing, but if you were to tell, what are the main mistakes that founders do when it comes to product in those areas in general?
I think it's a mistake that we all do in different areas of our life, and I think it's when we have an objective, a goal, something in our head, and I know you, Jan, you also have it. Like we all have it. So we have like I want to get there, and you envision how you will get exactly. Like you even see the colors, the shape, what road, and sometimes if we really want to stick to that single road, that's the real problem when you're trying to do the product market fit. So what I see with people in general, not only with founders, is when you think that there is only one road to get to your objective, that could be the beginning of the end. I think having that objective and knowing that you get to the peak of the mountain from different paths, there is always different paths to get there, and adding people that it's more capable than yourself in getting there, it's gonna save you time and money, and it will increase the chances of success, and also the enjoyment of the process will be different for the founder in this case, or the person in this case, but also for the team accompanying that leader.
100%. I mean, I agree completely. So mainly you focus on those early stages of development of those products.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've been, to be honest, I've done businesses from scratch myself. Right now, I've worked with companies in the like idea phase, early stage, scale up phase, and growth phase. I even worked with a Polish company, very traditional business in manufacturing, which is already kind of in the declining phase. So I've touched all of the, I would say, four phases of businesses, like idea, startup, scale up, and the growth phase that you either go down or you keep going up and you need to reinvent yourself. So I would not say that I have an area of expertise. I consider myself a little bit of like a Swiss Army knife with a deep expertise in management and like go-to-market model and marketing and sales. So towards commercial and management, but I definitely understand well product, human resources, different areas. And this is probably coming from being involved in the big family business since an early age and needing to do everything. I did have my own businesses plus seven businesses that I built and either closed or sold to someone else from scratch. And you know, when you are a one-man show and you need to do it everything is you are not proficient, but you need to still do it. And ultimately, if you would ask me and my vision and why I pay so much attention to sales and marketing and like revenue generation and profitability, because I always
Mhm.
talk about, yes, we need to gain traction and make revenue, but revenue without profits for me is like I don't believe in those stories, right? So I'm more traditional in my financial
This there's a
approach.
lot of startups in our region.
Yeah, I'm more like, let's call it private equity discounted cash flows guy, and I like to see cash in the bank. Call me old, but I like that. But yeah, so my approach is in some areas I would say quite traditional, and in others quite disruptive. But I ultimately have a tendency to be inclined towards the commercial area with the management and financial component really, really well attached to that. And I promote and sell that ideas to the management teams, founders, and even investors in the businesses that I work with.
But do you have any tricks, any frameworks that you use when it comes to scaling the business in general, scaling the revenue, scaling the operations?
I mean, there are tricks that you keep learning. I do believe, specifically when you talk about selling and marketing, it's a recipe. And each of us that has done this several times, they or we have a recipe, like very simple steps. But the problem I see even with myself when I'm trying to apply this from one business to the other is you always need to do some changes. What doesn't work is take something that worked in the past in another business and try to copy paste it in this new business. Normally that doesn't work. It's a framework of reference. It's quite simplistic, but what really works is specifically selling and marketing people. It's like always giving bullshit that, oh, this is like art, and you need to be like soft skills. And to be honest, for me, it's a recipe. Once you find out the recipe, you can teach this recipe to your team can learn this, and your team can go and sell for you. So that's processes and systems. And you were just asking to me, how do I grow or scale businesses? You need to create processes and systems. And I basically use very simple methodology. I focus on four key areas: strategy, people, execution, and cash, and develop those four pillars on the businesses, on the different areas, right? I think specifically when it comes to product and specifically when it comes to the commercial area, having a P&L with the teams and the teams owning the P&L, it's a primarily thing. Because the moment you tell a person, and I see this with my kids and even with my wife, hey, here is money, go do whatever you want, or don't even think about it, just do your work, it goes south. People
Mhm.
in businesses, they need to be financial literate. They need to know about finance, no matter if they are engineers, no matter if they are sellers, no matter if they're in human resources or wherever they are. You need to own the profit and loss statements of your area, and you need to be capable of reading basic financial statements, because the language in business is money. If not, you will be in an NGO, and even in an NGO, it's money, or you go bankrupt and you end up not picking up sponsors for your cause. So you need to speak that game. I don't buy, because I've gone through this conversation with several people in different teams, in different companies, in different geographies, that no, 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 I'm really good at programming. I shouldn't care about money. I don't agree with that, because if you are not good with money, you shouldn't be making money to start with. Like, money is the language, not necessarily the purpose, but it's the language that we use in business, and we all at all levels need to understand that and own it. And that's when you mix accountabilities, which is specific to your role, with responsibilities, treating the money of the business as if it's your own. And to do
Mhm.
that, you need a P&L.
So incentive drives the business, it drives the behavior.
Yeah, maybe to some extent, yes, it drives the behavior, but it's the two sides. It's accountabilities and responsibilities. You really need to own the what's the purpose of the business. It's very difficult to translate if you are in programming, for example. If you are an engineer, revenue, like, what means revenue for you? I mean, I've gone through these conversations with engineers. Revenue for you means, if we have revenue, we'll be able to pay your salary next month. Right?
Right.
It's that close to the business. But since you are putting code and developing features, it looks distant, because you are not closing revenue. You actually don't see the client. So
Mhm.
that's when we need to start bridging and really communicate. And that's kind of product market fit to some extent. You need to really bring together, and that's in IT, but it also happens in manufacturing. Like, you have the production line, and they don't give a fuck about anything going on in sales. Like, hey, they pay me to come here and produce a shirt. The shirt is ready. It's not my problem to sell it. Well, it's not your problem, but it is, because if we don't sell it, we don't have money to pay salaries for anyone, right? And the business goes to shit. So, I mean, it's human behavior. And I think it's, again, it comes back to basic principles. The principle of, I'm accountable to execute the shirt and deliver it to the sales guys. And then the responsibility of knowing why it has to be done with quality, why it has to be done with certain cost in certain time. and even to the extent of changing features, listening to the guys in sales, or the other way around. So responsibility and accountability, we need to bring it together, and that's kind of bringing together uh, engineers with commercial teams, or bringing together manufacturing with commercial, or you name it. But it's, we need to talk the same language, which at the end, it's what you see in the first line in the financial statements, which is revenue. And at the end, not all of us are accountable to revenue, accountable, but we are all responsible for revenue to some extent, and to
Mm-hmm.
make good use of that money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning teams, and I know you've led so many marketing and sales teams. Are there any recipes for a good sales team? Do you have any suggestions here?
I think for any team in general, it's the hardest area of all to find good people. And if you go, this is something I've discovered lately, to be honest, lately in the last 4 or 5 years. If you pretend to go and fish from the same pot as your competition to bring talent into your business, that's not the right strategy, because you are competing with money, basically. Like, it's that there is nothing like, it's just the budget versus the budget, and the biggest companies that are paying more are going to take the fishes from that pot. So you kind of need to get creative of what pots of excellent people, of A players or B players that can develop into A players, you can fish from, and bring them and convince them to jump into your business. Not necessarily because you will pay them more, but because it's more challenging or more exciting for them, and their development path will be better. So they will become growing professionally and making more money with you than staying in that sector, or in that company, or in that area. So it involves a part of creativity on where to fish from. I can give you as an example, uh, in OQB, the typical path for example, hiring an account executive for your sales team would go to, like, let's see what Relex and Blue Yonder and Oracle and Snowflake have, because this is people working in those companies, is excellent people. Salaries are too high. We are in an early stage startup. Like, we can pay for that. Maybe these people is not willing to give the extra. But what I did is I went to oil and gas. People who is rough, used to high, volume, rough people, not super well paid. They are like willing to do the extra work. Same like manufacturing, like selling to manufacturing or machines. Not necessarily huge commissions, not necessarily huge salaries, but the people is the, and when you touch with this, it's hard to convince them, hey, you are doing great job there, you've been there 10, 15, 20 years, would you like to join this IT early stage startup? And it's a selling process, but it's a different pot where it's very hard to fish, and it's also very hard to 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 show the recipe and to do the training. But ultimately, I can tell you, in the case of OQB, it's really working. But it involves an extraordinary effort on training, talent acquisition, and the process of selling during this talent acquisition phase. The way we recruit there is like, the amount of time we invest in each candidate, it's crazy. Not like nobody in our competitors will do this. And we know that. So it's part of the competitive advantage. So that's how, with a
Mm-hmm.
real life example, I can tell you, we balance, or you need to balance where you fish from when you're trying to bring talent.
So ownership and mission, basically, as you would probably call it.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. I wanted to also explore more this topic that we started with, so sports. And I just wanted to ask you, which of your sports and training experiences do you consider crucial in running your business? I mean, is it discipline? Is it what?
I think and non-businessman or executive or person who really likes what they do in life will tell you that you need consistency. And what sport showed me, and being in business before sport when I was a children, is if you stay consistent, you will end up achieving something close to what you want. Not necessarily what you wanted or how you imagine it, but it's the ability to stay on track on good and bad days. Because if you stay on track, and of course, with the respective iterations you need to do. But if you stay on track on the good and the bad days, the overall trend on long periods of time, like a portfolio of investment, is going to be positive. And that's what you're willing to get in a business. And that's the hard part, because most businessmen, when inexperienced, I would say, or unsuccessful, because I don't believe on successful or unsuccessful. It's like people who actually stay on track, or people that decided to go somewhere else, and it's perfectly fine. It's just how you assess different options or challenges that appear in your path. But I would argue that consistency is the single most important thing, like showing up every day, good days, bad days. And there is days that it's like, oh, it's not so good. But ultimately, if in a long enough, for me, long enough to be honest, is plus 5 years. Normally for me, you can see my life is like in decades, like chunk of 10 years. I'm 40, so I've done 4 big blocks of 10, and I'm going for the next one, which is 40 to 50. And I like to see that because it's enough time to really see it change. For me, the minimum, absolutely the minimum, and this is how I assess with OQB, with JWA, with you guys in Uplover and many other businesses, is 1,000 days. And roughly 1,000 days of work, because skipping weekends and so on, is like 3.5 years. If we stick to do something very unique during 3.5 years and we stick to it, I've seen, I mean, with these businesses, 10x in revenue. That's what you can accomplish. Why? Because it's very difficult to stay on track for 1,000 days consecutively. Like people who come to me and it's like, hey, man, I want to get fit, stay consistent 1,000 days. It's fucking hard. Hey, I want to lose weight. They want 60, 90 days per program. Like that shit is never going to work. You want a profound change? Go and do a diet, if you want to call it a diet or a program, for 1,000 days consecutive.
Right, right.
You will achieve that. So it's consistency.
So yeah, discipline, not motivation.
No motivation. I don't believe in motivation. Motivation is the mother of destruction, I think. I mean, it's good maybe to some extent just to ignite something, but like keep watching YouTube videos to get up every day and go to Uplover to work, I don't think it's a good recipe.
Yeah, right. That's true. But do you still train, by the way?
Yeah, I try to do trainings every day. From To be honest, from health perspective, I try to stay active at least 90 minutes a day. What that means, like I can give you an example right now in Mexico. Like yesterday I did zero, like absolutely zero, because I was working my ass from 5 a.m. to like 11 p.m. There is days like that, and it's okay. Today that I will finish the podcast with you, I said to my wife, I'm taking half of the day off. Here is the day of the mothers. I'm gonna ride to, day of the mothers with my mom and my wife and the aunties and everything. When I'm fucked, I need to go in the bike, and I will go in the bike with water and food until I can sustain that. So it can be 3 hours, it can be 6 hours. So
Okay.
I think the balance, to be honest, comes from being very unbalanced. But if you take consistency, staying active 90 minutes every day, that's my trend. If you would take the last 10 years of my life, probably it will be much more than 90 minutes, because when I was an elite athlete, I was training like 40 hours a week. But since I retired, if you would take that block, maybe the average would be 2 hours per day. Why? Because in the weekends that I like to go longer, like I like hiking, I would go to Tatras 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. And but I stay active most of days. What happened yesterday that I did zero is like one day every 3 months. I try not to do that. And if I know I will be not training, I would walk, city bike, walk the stairs, like move as much as I can between, Katowice, Warszawa, Krakow, and just stay super active.
So you,
That's how I approach it.
you're kind of addicted.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's mental sanity. It's something that I love. People ask me several times, like, would you go back and like be an elite again? It's like, I think my tendency is to be an elite in everything I do, but you can't be an elite athlete and an elite businessman. So I'm right now into being an elite investor and an elite partner for the companies I work with, and I can be an elite athlete at the same time. I like to think of myself as as a guy that it's developing a deep level of expertise in business for the next 10 years, and in the meantime wants to stay healthy with at least 90 minutes of exercise every day, and from time to time with some kind of challenge, right? Maybe a race here, or but without over focusing on, like, I need to run a marathon below 2 hours and a half or something like this, because it will implode me. The way I function is, if I start to set up those benchmarks, I know I can accomplish them, but they require a ton of work at the expense of business and family that I'm not willing to do now. I already did that in the past. So my refocus goes into business, family, and later into sport. But
And
health, it stays as a primary thing in my life, because I want to become, and I want to show this to my kids, that health, it like when, like, brushing your teeth, like, you need to do exercise every day.
okay, and in order to do all of that, what time do you get up?
uh yeah, I'm an early bird. Like, normally I would say 4:30 to 5 a.m. I try to get always the workout first, with few exceptions, like today, because yesterday I
That was
went.
the second question, actually. Yeah. So the workout first.
Yeah, I try to get the workout first. I would say 95% of the time, because it always happens. If I leave it for later, I know something will happen. Someone will call, a client will tell you, and then you need to prioritize. And if you really prioritize health as number one thing when you have space, because nobody is calling you at 5 a.m. in the morning unless you are in Mexico, which is actually what happened yesterday. So that's why I don't like traveling a lot, because as soon as you start, moving across timelines, you
Yeah.
start working not like 8 or 10 hours. You start working like fucking 14 hours a day, because people from the other hemisphere is talking to you when you wake up, and you are going for a run, and you have like 7 WhatsApps, 4 Slacks, and 10 Teams, and you need to assess that. Like,
Yeah.
they're like in the middle of the day, right? So yeah, it just happens. So I try actually to stay very consistent on not traveling a lot, or just traveling around the time zones that I normally move, and remote remote all the other meetings.
But if but that what interests me the most in this ultra sport is the mindset. That's why I was asking you about the habits, etc. Because that just seems superhuman to me in a sense. Like, did you notice anything special in the ultra athletes in general? Probably not only triathlon, because I know your network and the community is quite strong. But what's the differentiation there?
uh, it's gonna sound crazy, but like common patterns: overtraining, so training a shitload of volume and shitload of time. uh, Overeating, because you need to eat a lot of food. And I don't know if that's those two that I just said are like healthy habits or not, because like now I struggle because I don't train as much, but I still kind of eat a lot, right? I'm not fat, me in person, but like I feel heavy because I still eat a lot of food, because I'm used to eat all the time, all the day, but I don't exercise 7 or 6 hours per day. So it's like you need to assess that with care. So to be honest, there is some good habits that you pick, like staying consistent and doing the work, and like these kind of principles that you go and apply into business, and they will work. But there are some other things that kind of trash your life, like training too much, like fucking adrenal syndrome, like you're tired all the time, and like all that stuff is like, and like I just told you now, like my tendency, and I don't know if that's healthy or not, but it's me. It's like Iñaki hasn't changed from 30 years ago to now. Like, it's the same person with different environment or different challenge. So my tendency is still the same. And that's why I told you, like, when we finish today, I will go and like destroy myself on the bike for whatever it takes me, because I need that. Is that an addiction? Is that mental sanity? I don't know, but I know it works for me. It's okay. It brings some kind of unbalance in my life that ultimately keeps me in a positive trend.
Here. But here is an interesting fact. You studied chemical engineering, right? Is
Yes.
that of any use right now?
To be honest, it is. And I will tell you with this basic principle. If you would ask me what you do in chemical engineering, is you measure inputs and outputs and what's in between. And when you think about processes, it works the same way. Specifically when you think about money, it like if you studied like finance, because you are always thinking incomes, outcomes, and what's in between and how to make it better, like with the efficiencies. So
Mm-hmm.
my assessment to absolutely everything in life is with that mindset, and I learned that in chemical engineering. So if I use like chemistry, I don't use chemistry at all. I don't even fucking remember it. But when it comes to basic principles like that, it's absolutely mind blowing. And I didn't actually understood that up until recently, because I was doing some M&A transactions with a very good friend that I studied the university with, and he lives in Spain. He worked for Merrill Lynch and at super high level, doing M&As in Mexico and in New York. And it was like, okay, he studied the same and he went that direction. And I'm kind of like, we kind of understand everything together when we're talking about finance, like common language. And I'm like, huh, it's interesting. I think it's coming from chemical engineering.
Okay.
And that's when I realized that. And that realization come recently as well. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you are looking at the companies and the problems and the companies that you advised to, what were the biggest challenges that you see in general with young founders? I think I know you have a lot of companies that are early stage that you're involved in. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it's related to the age or even the geographical area of the sector. I think there are three basic barriers for growing or scaling a business. And one is leadership, the other one is infrastructure, and the other one is basically marketing. And when it comes to leadership, the inability to grow leaders inside the organization, right? Uh, if you remember how we met initially, it was because you had this initiative that you wanted in Uplover to have this community to help you to develop leaders internally. So that what you saw, it's like from my end also one of the barriers to actually like be able to keep going and to get to the next phase. So leadership. The other one, scalable infrastructure, which means it can be lack of systems and structures, physical or at organizational level, right? Why we need this? To handle complexity in communications and decision making processes, because as you know, every time you have more and more people, it becomes more difficult, the communication and the systems and structures, even at technical level, so the infrastructure at that level, but also the recruiting processes, like how
Right.
do you develop, how do you do the app lovers development academy so they keep learning, and all these like scalable infrastructure, how to scale that internally. And it's kind of related to leadership as well, and then to marketing as well, will have a tremendous impact. And then when it comes to marketing, the failure to scale up an effective marketing team to attract new relationships, when it means when it comes to customers or talent acquisition, what we just mentioned before, to the business, or address an increased competitive pressure, right? What we were talking, P&L margins, how to like compress the cost and move here and there. All that is strongly related again to marketing, because remember, like specifically but not limited to technology, inbound, which is strongly related to marketing, is really really important. And I will tell you a move that I just did in OQB, and that I was commenting with a few like really high level people in Silicon Valley, and which is like inbound and outbound team depending from marketing, because you become very clear in the functions of marketing. It's opening and sales is closing, but the interrelationship of both is like the chicken and the egg, what was first, right? For revenue, and you need both of them. But if you are like authentically 100% like super diligent, you need marketing. If you don't open something, you can't close anything. So you
Mm-hmm.
need that entrance to marketing. The thing is, many Many sellers are doing marketing without realizing, and they are at the same time criticizing marketing and, oh, marketing is bullshit, and it's like, okay man, but you are doing marketing, like what the fuck are you talking about? Right, so it's kind of funny. But yes, those would be the three main barriers I see: leadership, infrastructure, and marketing.
Okay, and how do you find those companies? How do you find the startups that you're involved with? I mean, you mentioned two stories. That was rather a coincidence, but do
Yeah.
you have a structure for that, a process, or they're approaching
No,
you?
to be honest, it just happens. Like, I've been approached by many people that I actually disregarded in Poland and abroad. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky that you get some kind of reputation that you actually help in something. I would never say that. Oh, because I came here, we did 10x, or it's like when you hire an IT team or an IT software to do something for your business. It's hard to assess that specific software how much actually brought into the result of the organization. But you always have the question, what happens if we take out that software, and then probably it will be a decrease or not? Like, that's how I see myself. I play a role, I'm part of a team. Doesn't mean that I'm like, like the guy who like turned around the business or generated the 10x. Or so I think that maybe humbleness, if you want to put it to that extent, or approach, brings recommendation from one business to the other, and people to other people. And to be honest, I don't have the need on like me even going and finding businesses. I'm much more always like disregarding conversations or businesses because the mindset or the principles of these founders are not aligned with mine. And I'm very, very much into doing profitable businesses, but also enjoying the process with the people who are leading those businesses, right? So those two need to be compliant. Building a profitable business for the right reasons with the right people.
But there's also an industry, right? Because your background is, I mean, you're very much health sport oriented, and a lot of those projects are from the area. Is it because you just feel very strong in that, or is there a mission behind it as well?
I want to do something meaningful for the planet and for the people. That's why I'm into climate tech. I'm into like even companies like OQB that had a strong impact with the supply chain efficiencies into the environment. And I'm very much into people. So people meaning health, people meaning personal development, professional growth. I had, e-coaching platforms in the past that I sold. So anything that will promote becoming a better person or having a better world, for the matter of fact, I will actually do it. I have funny story because before coming to Mexico, I mean, I'm not gonna disclose any names, but there was someone in Poland reaching out to me to do a fantastic business. If you would see the numbers, fantastic, like it was a no-brainer, but it was like with vaping, the vaping.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, I don't know if I want to do that, man. It's like I don't feel so much related to the cost. So
Yeah.
we decided to dig that one. And yes, you become, and there has been also IT companies that just let's get rich. Okay, good luck in getting rich. Like, I'm not into that. I'm also wanting to get rich, but with other things surrounding getting rich, not only because of the money, right?
Right.
So there has to be several components, not only one.
Okay, and you're advising sport tech companies. Maybe you can give us some general problems that these industries are facing, probably data oriented, etc. Because I know that's a trend in tech right now, especially in sport.
Yeah, I mean, I started and I had very early connections with Svexa, Silicon Valley Exercise Analytics, where we develop exercise intelligence algorithms. And actually, now we are developing products. It's been a fantastic journey. I'm not so much operational involved in to the extent where I am with you guys in AppLovers or with OQB or with JWA. But early on, I think the challenge was understanding that we were way ahead, way, 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 way ahead of where the market was, because this is like many, many years ago, pre-pandemic. And to actually acknowledge that, okay, this will be a business. And you know, it's always risky because it's like, okay, we are building this that we know humans are gonna need, but like 3 years down the line, and you start like, okay, we'll need a round of financing here and there, and it's like so much like a dream. That was completely new for me, to be honest, because I'm coming more from private equity, discounted cash flows, cash flow generating businesses. So it was like a story I was not used to, and it was fantastic to see that they were able to accomplish. Um, they have a fantastic leader there, and a very Scandinavian way of doing things. And Scandinavians have peculiar styles, and I've learned a lot from them. So right now that I'm not operational at all, but I've seen the entire picture, it's very, very interesting to see that it's developing into the right path, but it took a lot of patience and a lot of balls to stay on track, right? So these health companies, they need to see way ahead of time. That's it's like kind of pharma companies. You need to be thinking way, way, way ahead of time. And sometimes for investors, sometimes for the market itself, and for possible partners, it's not so clear because it seems to be too risky to go with you. And that was the case, for example, with Svexa and with many other health tech businesses. I think the ability to trace or to put a path, but be able to actually take it from different angles and include different people with different visions in that path that you are willing to walk, because it's going to become several years, five, a decade, is very important, because it's also very possible that you stay on track of what you think, and it's the market is going the other direction, and then you end up imploding your company. So I think health tech in general, sport tech in general, it's a multi-billion dollar sector that will keep growing. We just need to be aware that we need to solve people problems, because sometimes we try to over engineer the technology and we think we have great ideas with actually going deep into what people want and need or will want and need. Like diabetes is not going down, it's going up. How are you going to assess that, right? And then I see so many people, for example, right now talking about artificial intelligence for coaching, right? And regenerative and I think that's kind of cool, but there is a
I
limit
mean,
to that.
coaching or training or training.
Yeah, coaching and training and all these, like let's say auto-generated programs based on your data and recovery metrics and loading days, and it's kind of cool. But like when I see that against, like, hey guys, how many diabetics are and how the blood glucose is working on them, it's like people and market is like going towards like this very niche part of like training. I was very, very early on with the company Humango, that probably you will talk to Eric, uh, with Svexa, with Alan Cousins, with many people that it's like really ingrained into this market, but the market is limited. And in the other area, you have like diabetes that can actually support sport because it's blood glucose, and it's much broader market. But I don't see the level of like really like getting into details with technology, and rather the old approach of like pharmaceuticals, trying to like just give you the medicine, but not I don't see the consciousness on how to assess it in a wellness, like an all, like the human perspective, not either training or blood glucose, but hey, you are a human, you need to stay consistent eating and moving towards this, and if you do this for like 10 years, you will avoid certain cancers, certain diseases like Alzheimer, and
Yeah.
certain problems like diabetes, right? I think there is a lack of this like holistic approach.
So, but out of curiosity, when you were an athlete yourself, did you use tech in that manner? I mean, any
Yeah,
enhancement in data analysis, in tradings, etc., any platforms dedicated to that, or was it very
yeah.
clear?
I mean, no. I was very, very much in technology. My coach at the time, which is my coach till today, because I do believe that you need to have mentors as well for a very long time. No matter if you're an amateur athlete or a professional athlete, I stay with the same coach already 10 years, more than 10 years, Alan Cousins. And I specifically choose Alan to be my coach because he was the guy who was criticized because he was a mad scientist and he only cared about data, blood analytics,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like 2014 or something like this. Like what you see today was inexistent, and this
Very
guy
early.
was already into ML, kind of like Python modeling and loading days, and I was using HRV, heart rate variability, to measure my recovery. Now everyone is using it, but back in the day, I remember Wall Street Journal did an interview to me in New York in 2015, I think, or 16, about HRV for training, because it was kind of unheard, the application in sport. So it's like, to be honest with you, Jan, it's very simple to do sport and to stay healthy. The problem is, it's a great business to market it otherwise and to overcomplicate it, because then you can use all these gadgets and all this technology that it's important, but if it's not authentic and it's not usable, the hardware and the data and the software to actually help you to move to a holistic approach, is kind of useless, because a compilation of data from hardware that is actually deficient, okay, you have some data, but what's the quality of the data? What decisions can you make with the data? It's kind of useless, right?
Of
The
course,
same with the softwares.
of
So
course.
meaningful technology is very important.
But how, because you see those changes and you know a lot of athletes that are training right now, and how do they use tech products or software or or data analysis right now? What changed, like, as you see the market now?
I mean, I was just like last week with the Mexican Federation of Soccer, because I did help in a project there with analytics for the Qatar, which, I mean, it was not a fantastic outcome for the Mexican team, but it was a fantastic outcome from analytics, because we analyze all games of all the teams that Mexico was going to play against too, and we built the tactics on how to assess them. The problem was the management of the team didn't use them, so it was like, okay, the work was done with analytics and data, but ultimately the management decided not to take it, and that's what you see in technology as well. So what happens with athletes is kind of the same. We have helped soccer teams, we have helped individual athletes, and you can get off the same sense. When it comes to individual athletes, specifically in sports such as triathlon, you see super high tech, like core temperature measurements, blood glucose monitoring, loading dates with artificial intelligence, machine learning, data lakes analytics, like you name it. It's like really goes deep. Cycling, kind of the same. There are some kind of these niche sports that are ultra technologically advanced when it comes to nutrition, recovery. I just mentioned two of them. There is other entertainment sports. Sorry?
Mhm. These are mainly endurance sports, right?
Yeah, but there is also entertainment sport like NBA, NFL, NHL, La Liga, all these like UEFA. Of course, I mean, it's sport, but it goes in a huge industry. So, of course, they are assessing this with a lot of technology, tremendous technology, but it's like a company. It involves so much decision making, budgets, that it's not only related to the technology itself. It's like when Salesforce is willing to sell their CRM to, you name it, to like any company. So of course the technology is very good. It's the best CRM you can buy, but then are the clients using all the features of the CRM, Salesforce, or just part of them? It's kind of the same with the technology. When you go full blown out with like teams and federations, it's kind of the same approach, because it involves management, emotions, and also humbleness. Because how explain me how a computer will do my job better if I've been doing this for the last 30 years,
Of course. So yeah, of course, of course. So the
right? So
execution isn't isn't there, but probably also the money, right? So I mean, a particular sport industry needs money to actually implement technology and implement that what you were describing.
for sure, but I mean, we are also coming from a overheated market where there was a lot of smoke and mirrors in technology, and technologies that didn't do anything for you. And many of these teams and federations and sportsmen bought them, and they are kind of still using them. And there is like the actual execution on the side of like the collection of the data, well, the hardware is crap. So what do you expect from like the analysis of the data of if the data is crap because the hardware is crap and it's imprecise. So it's kind of always assess the quality and don't overcomplicate. Technology not necessarily complicate things. It has to be simplifying the things. And ultimately, if you are the user, what you want is a problem solved or a return over the investment or a specific outcome. Ultimately, you don't understand and you actually don't care if that's done by monkeys jumping in the jungle or by artificial intelligence. You want the outcome. You want that at certain time, certain cost, and with certain degree of error, right? So we really need to remember ourselves when we are selling and when we are building products to aim for what the client needs, and don't forget that they are the ones paying for and they are the ones with the pains.
That's true. That's true. When I was doing the research, I noticed that's something that was very interesting. That you are very involved in the promotion of the culture of organ donation. So I thought that that's something very unique. And why is it that important to you?
Well, when I started my career of elite athlete in Mexico, I wanted to kind of bring some kind of message with altruism, like for no reasons. And I found out that it was a very interesting story. It was something I didn't knew back then, the organ donation. So I decided in 2010 to start a foundation which is quite big right now in Mexico. And I'm not the president even anymore. I'm not even involved in the. I just like let the foundation keep going with the person who was assisting me in the past, Daniel Hernandez. But I decided to start that foundation just to tell the world and tell the people you can do something greater than yourself, and it's not going to cost you anything. Because, as you know, I'm very much into like wealth management. And for me, true wealth don't necessarily mean that if you inherit a tree, you will chop the tree and eat the tree, right? What you see with many heritage. For me, when you inherit anything, meaning a stock, meaning money, meaning a company, meaning an organ, is to make better use of it and to keep going, not necessarily to chop it. If we will use these uh, parallel assumptions with, for example, money, okay, you inherit something, you take a bit of it, but you keep generating, not because you want to protect your kids and the next 300 generations. You do it because it's very productive in the end. You are generating business, you keep the economy active, you take what you need, not necessarily what you want, what you really need, and you live a good life, but always below your means. Because what I think is destroying humanity and destroying the fucking world is that we want to chop all the trees we can, literally, in terms of consuming consumption and buying like 5 cars or super expensive shit, or just like traveling everywhere and like don't give them a fuck, it's only about us. And I actually found out, as I said, opportunistically, that organ donation culture like kind of brings that mindset more tangible, because it's not money, it's something like why you will not give your heart if you're dead already to someone else
Right.
and save someone. And then you it was very interesting for me, because this basic principle of chopping the tree or just taking a piece of fruit of it, it was very interesting because I got into many conversations, and it's for me very interesting to see how human mind and different people approach the same situation. And there is people that no, I wouldn't, like, I die and I want to fucking be buried and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, right? So it's just interesting for me, and it was just to make I don't know, a shine of my philosophy of life into a specific area. But I would say it's very similar to what I would treat wealth or even business or money and or many other areas, like more minimalistic approach on how living life, always below your means.
And are you involved in any other CSR activities?
No,
currently?
to be honest, right now I decided not to. But one of the things I want to do as soon as I gain traction with my investments and recover a little bit my wealth, because I had some fuck ups in the last 2 years from liabilities I didn't saw coming, and sometimes it happens that are just happening to you, and you need to suck it up and keep going. But I lost approximately 80% of my capital, and I'm in the rebuild process. I one of my primary motivators to go back in business is to start few initiatives specifically into sport, and lecturing in the, how to handle personal finance further down the line in the next few years in these two areas, like health and fitness and sport, and how to manage personal finance for specifically for older people. You will think younger people know, like baby boomers and millennials that are already kind of like chickens without heads and are like already ingrained into the economy. So how to handle better their finances.
But you mentioned the Jesus, 80% of the capital. Could you share some maybe parts of the story, or is it too?
Yeah, I mean, I would be very honest. I actually was discussing this a little bit with Arthur. I mean, it's very personal situation, so I will not fully disclose everything. But when I was back doing business with my dad early on in his company, I was guarantor for some credits on some lines of credits for his business. I never hold equity. That's important. So I was never an equity holder. I was a member of the board, but I don't hold in the past equity. But I don't know, this was like 2007 or something like this, or even earlier. I signed some collaterals for him, and I don't know, he just decided to stop paying those collaterals like in 2022. But it turned out that the lines of credits were the one that I signed like
Yeah,
decades ago. So he wanted to like bankrupt his business and move on, and some like strategies there. And I was like I am still between movies and
I ask because I can imagine the pressure, but like, so that probably something like, how do you handle that? Is it sport that actually helps,
no,
or
I will tell you that I cried a lot. Like it was a Friday, I remember. I don't remember exactly. It was like 2 years ago. I cried a lot, like on fucking Friday. I remember I was there with a friend, and it's like, fuck, man. I called this guy immediately. I called two guys. One guy was Jurek of Jotbua, and the other guy was Kamil from OQB. And I was like fucking crying to fucking shit, like, fuck, what I will do. And to be honest, man, is like I had that capital, and I mean, I'm super like minimalistic and super conservatory, and like during my career as an elite athlete, I live without touching that capital. So I actually didn't need that capital. So it's kind of funny because I always had it. I never touch it. I'd grow it with investments, and suddenly you lose it, and you're like, "Fuck, what I will do?" Like nothing fucking changed, man. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Like nothing changed. It's this like invisible parachute that you feel you have, and suddenly
right?
it's gone, and then you're like, "Oh fuck, my life," and it's like, man, nothing happened.
Yeah, but still, that's the parachute, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that weekend was hard, and sometimes I had some flashbacks. The good story is I was able to recover my relationship with my dad, because there were some fuck ups after I left the business between him and me at personal level, because I was intermediary in the divorce between my dad and my mom, and of course the business was there,
yeah,
and for me the business was the one that needed to subsist in order to pay the bills for both of them. So I was protecting the business, not them, and then trying to be as fair as I could. So I was the lawyer in between and wrote the agreement. And then this happened, and there was like these 10 years of like back and forth with my dad and my mom of not great relationships. But after all this happened, I was able to recover very good relation with my dad, and hopefully I will be able to recover that money. It's not completely gone. I think it's gone. I rather think like this and keep pushing on. If I can recover it, great. If not, I will build it from scratch. If you
yeah.
would ask me what I'm good at, I'm good at making money without money. So I'm in a good position.
No, but I mean, thanks for sharing this. I mean, I love the transparency and the fact that you're that transparent with that. That's something. But yeah, that's an amazing story actually. And there are not many entrepreneurs that share that kind of stories publicly, and
Yeah,
that
it's
takes balls. I mean,
I was discussing this with Arthur about success or not success, and I think like you can define your what success for each of you. Like each of us, we need to decide what success. For me, success is I kind of own my time. Like I can decide what to do today or what not to do, and of course, I'm very responsible. So I sometimes I do things specifically and I overwork myself as I used to overtrain myself in the past, which I know is not great, but it's part of the unbalanced life. And I think a successful life, specifically for me, means to be on balance and to be free and to stick to the principles. And it feels really, really good when you decide not to do things because of the money. I think for me, that's success. When you are able to make decisions and leave money on the table and do it for the right reason with the right people. And I
Hmm.
feel that I am in that position after many, many years, not necessarily with a lot of money, but with a lot of will to make things happen and just with the right people with the right challenges.
So, what's the biggest obstacle to that success, in your
I
opinion?
think you know Superman, right? So I always tell, and it's something I really believe that your biggest strength. So my biggest strength, you know, activating businesses, doing things from scratch, making money without money, can become your kryptonite. Your ability to like fucking train 40 hours a week or work 80 hours a week, it's great, right? But that can become your kryptonite, and that's like gonna destruct you. So your biggest obstacle is yourself and your ability to ditch yourself into the hole. I
Right.
think that's the biggest risk and the biggest obstacle of specifically people that is highly motivated and trying to do uncommon things, right? For the right reasons. So I see that a lot in founders. That's why I work with them. I see that a lot with my teams that report to me. That's why I hire them. And I see that a lot with athletes. I don't coach a lot of people. I actually coach very, very few people right now. But the people I coach are people like this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was telling you before. This is the people I relate to, the businesses I relate to, because it's shared principles, shared mindsets, shared reasons. So it can work. Not necessarily it will work, but it has a better possibility. And I don't think that ultimately the goal will be winning the race or getting the money or doing the exit of the business, but what happened in between. Because that day you will fucking celebrate with champagne and it's over. But what you will always forget and what shape who you are, it's all those days of consistent work you were doing for decades.
Right. It's not the goal, it's the road, right? It's the road itself. But if there are some founders that are listening right now and they're like, wow, that guy is inspirational. I want to work with him. How can they find you? Where can they find you?
I mean, they can write me. I'm very active in Twitter, so they can write me in Twitter.
Hmm.
Inaki, like my name, Inaki. This little line that goes below. I don't know how to say it in English.
Yeah.
Underscore de la Parra, which is my last name, or they can write me to my email. Inaki, like my name, kropka or dot de la Parra all together at gmail.com, and I will be happy to talk to them.
All right.
As I said, I'm not like taking like clients here and there. I try to be very focused in the companies I work with. But if there is a possibility, an opening, and a right reason with the right team and the right mindset, I'm always willing to talk with them.
Nice. I mean, that's the transparency I mentioned because also a lot of advisors are like very hidden when it comes to their contact info, etc., or they just giving away LinkedIn's. But that's perfect. Thanks for that.
I mean,
Iñaki,
I am in LinkedIn as well, but yeah, I
of course,
use LinkedIn only like once a week right now. I don't
of
try to be
course.
so active there.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing all of those stories. That's quite inspirational, and the career is really inspirational. Thanks for your time and being here. I hope we will be able to have a part two of this episode because I feel that we didn't cover a lot of topics, but still, the timing is timing, so we need to keep the schedule. But thanks for joining us and sharing
Thank you,
everything.
Jan. Thank you, Jan, and we'll do a volume 2 and 3 if needed. Don't worry, and thank you to app lovers as well.
Stay in touch with us, subscribe to our podcast, give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.